Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Nick Zulovich, the editor from Buy Here, Pay Here reports. In today's webinar, from Money Pit to Money Train, how to achieve 10 times your marketing ROI, we're going to learn more about this topic from DealerSocket's Kevin Robinson and Calvin Krusik. But before we get started, I want to go over a few housekeeping items for today's webinar. Please make sure you've dialed in using the phone number provided in your communication email, or you're able to listen via your PC speakers. We are recording today's webinar, and we'll make that recording available to you as quickly as possible. You'll be in listen-only mode for this webinar, but we will reserve some time after the presentation for a question and answer session. You can submit your questions at any time through the questions box on the GoToWebinar control panel. If we aren't able to get to your question today, don't worry, because we'll forward it on to Kevin, Calvin, and the team at DealerSocket so they can respond back to you directly via email. Lastly, if you have any difficulty during the webinar, please click on the hand icon on the control panel to alert a member of our team. So to set the stage for today's session, our two presenters from DealerSocket, Kevin Robinson was employee number 32 at DealerFire when he joined the company 4 years ago. He was the very first hire in account management and eventually made his way to Director of Accounts, where he oversaw all website and marketing clients in the portfolio. Now Kevin works as the product manager for DealerSocket, leading the charge on website and marketing product development. And Calvin has an extensive background in digital marketing, including stops at Google Ads, YouTube, Bing, and Facebook, as well as Twitter and social media and blogging too. He produces competitive and creative strategies, not only for DealerFire customers' paid campaigns, but DealerFire's brand marketing as a whole. So let's learn more about how to go from the money pit to the money train with Kevin Robinson and Calvin Krusik. Gentlemen, the floor is now yours.
All right, thank you, Nick. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, no matter where you are currently located. I'm going to go ahead and get my screen set up here so that we can see the presentation. And we'll go ahead and get started off with a specific outline to cover in today's webinar. By the way, this is Kevin speaking, not to be confused, obviously, with my co-presenter, Calvin, so you can get a little bit acquainted with the voice. And in the first 3 parts of today's webinar, specifically, we're going to cover the state of automotive shopping and how automotive shopping has changed with consumers, and also how dealers have changed marketing strategies in the past 20 or so years. Then we're going to talk a little bit more about digital versus traditional marketing and what role that's specifically taken in automotive. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about building a digital brand. So if you've never started with any sort of digital marketing before, digital advertising before, where can you start? What questions can you answer for yourself? And really just the outline that you can build for future success. So with that, let's talk a little bit about the second part of the presentation, which Calvin will cover for us.
Hey everyone, so this is Calvin. So during the second half of the presentation, we're going to be talking about your digital tools and what tools utilize to incorporate with your marketing strategy, and then reporting on your success. How do we know if your digital strategy is successful, and then what KPIs should we be looking at when measuring success. And then kind of just to wrap it up, some of the key takeaways from today's webinar. So to kind of kick it off here, before we get, I guess, into the details of digital strategy, we first need to address the current state of automotive shopping. To kind of do that, we want to hear from you first. So I believe we have a flashbulb. So flashbulb here. So how do you currently handle digital marketing? We do it internally. We have an agency outside, and we share responsibility with an outside agency. All right, so I see most of you have submitted. A lot of internal management with your campaigns, a lot of kind of outside responsibility sharing with the agency as well. So get some good information there. So, like I talked before, so digital branding drives the future. So the overall message from our webinar today is really how your digital brand drives your marketing strategy. Specifically, we're going to talk about relevance and desire, or as we refer to it as visibility and engagement. For many years, automotive marketing was really based on the interruption model, right? In some cases, it still is. But with this, it was really about whoever yelled the loudest would likely get a consumer's business, and whoever spent the most would likely get the consumer's business. But nowadays, that's really not the case, and that's not really how it works anymore. And it's not really enough to be loud or visible. You also need to be engaging and relevant. And really, why? And it's really about consumers are more distracted than ever. There's more devices, there's more resources, there's more capacity. And when we look at the research, there are over 21 digital touch points in each consumer's car shopping experience. That number jumps to almost 28 for millennials. So there's more information than there has ever been, and it's really up to consumer to disseminate, and that really leads to a flurry of indecision. So when we look at like shopping for a specific make or model, for example, 63% of consumers start with a brand in mind, and then only 20% of those consumers actually buy that specific brand. So that really goes to show that over 80% are open to influence. And this information overload really prompts consumers to look for value position, not always with a specific vehicle, but with the dealer, and a dealer that offers a clear message and great value. So when we talk about how influential a dealer's website is, 83% prefer to use a dealership's website during the shopping process. And you think about that like 20 years ago, that really wasn't the case, right? And so most dealers didn't have websites, and everyone really relied on third-party lead providers like AutoTrader and Cars.com to find information. So even when you look at the number of dealerships consumer visits before they purchased, 10 years ago, consumers visited 5 dealerships before they bought a vehicle. Now that average number is 1.6. Meaning that consumers really have their minds made up on who they're going to purchase from before they even visit you. So shoppers really want to know who they are doing business with, and more importantly, who they can trust. So that's why engagement within digital brand is such an important commodity now and in the future as well. And when we talk about the unlimited capacity and devices, mobile is a big thing. And so keep in mind that the digital landscape is evolving exponentially. And if we're going to consider our consumers and what they want, we also have to account for where they are. So in this case, mobile devices, an increase in purchasers who have used their mobile device to find information about cars and trucks in 2011 has increased 460%. So now, the brand visibility on mobile devices is certainly important. So now we understand some of you on this webinar, might not have websites, and some might not. But one piece of advice that we can offer is that when it comes to assessing your current website or building a new one, make sure it's optimized for all devices, or as we refer to it as responsive or adaptive.
And that's something that we will talk a little bit about later, specifically responsive adaptive. How do I know which one my website is if I have a website? So that's coming a little bit later on. But after we've covered buyer behavior, consumer shopping information, we also want to take a look at how digital and traditional mix together. So specifically how traditional marketing, because we understand that a lot of dealers, a lot of companies still use traditional marketing, and that's fine. But we want to make sure that we're always keeping in mind the ratio of traditional to digital. So that being said, starting out with a stat here specifically from Google Automotive Trends, we see that digital has definitely been a driving force, let's say over the past decade or even more, but many dealer marketing budgets are still being misaligned with consumer behavior. So for instance, take for instance print publications in this graphic. So according to Google, about 34% of advertising budget is still invested in print, while only about 6% of that actually accounts for user consumption. So there's a misalignment there. And while many businesses find sticking with that strategy of, this is the way that it's always been done, those same organizations don't really realize that the ROI in traditional marketing has been slipping substantially. And to show that, the discrepancy in advertising spend, the dealer socket marketing team, the team that we work with on a daily basis, actually conducted a study last year that outlined two very important metrics across the nationwide data sample. So specifically, average total profit per unit and average marketing cost per sold. So in the case of traditional, the average total profit per unit in traditional marketing was about $1,700, while the average marketing cost per sold was about $1,500, a little over $1,500. So only about a $200 difference there. But once we actually compare that to our sample set that included digital, we found that average total profit per unit was actually about $2,500, and average marketing cost per sold was about $150, so much, much lower, much more being made from the sale itself. And it's a substantial difference in marketing ROI, which basically brings us to our main point of the presentation today, and that's essentially that traditional marketing can cost up to 10 times more than digital, depending on what you're using. So really, the first part of the presentation here is covering the why, right? The why behind the importance of digital in the spectrum of marketing. So we want to do another flash poll here, and we want to see where you currently stand at your dealership. If you're doing marketing internally, externally, or not doing it all, doesn't matter. We just want to specifically know, what is the current percentage of digital in your marketing split? So we'll launch that flash poll here shortly. So how much of your current marketing is digital? Are we saying none? Obviously you don't have any right now. About 25%, 50, 75, or 100%, which means we've completely phased out traditional marketing. So go ahead and vote in that poll, and we'll be right back with the answers. All right, great. So based on our results, it looks like about 50 to 75% is digital, quite a bit in the 100% as well, which is great because most of the webinar today is actually based around what you can do with the digital strategy and some of the tools that we can provide you, that other vendors can provide you, that you can provide yourself as well. So great insight there, and we'll make sure to kind of tailor that moving forward. Okay, let's go on to our next piece. So building a digital brand, let's start at the very top of what's called our marketing funnel. So we've covered the industry trends, we've covered consumer behavior, and now we've covered traditional versus digital. So let's focus on the what of digital. So specifically what we're going to call your digital action plan. We're going to cover strategies and tools in just a second. Calvin's going to jump into those. But to start us off, let's address your digital brand. And specifically, let's talk about 4 items that, at least in my opinion and the opinion of working with other dealers, really set you up for success. So those 4 are being distinctive, immersive, authentic, and ambitious. Now I'm going to cover each one of these in depth, and I'm actually going to give a little bit more backstory, some examples of how DealerSocket and DealerFire have done these in the past. and then how they can help you out as well. So just something to keep in mind here as you're going through the process of setting up your strategy. So first of all, let's talk about being distinctive. So for being distinctive, really what we're asking is what makes your brand truly unique, and why should that matter to your customers, to your potential customers? And the example that I have for this is at DealerFire, a campaign that we call Break Free. It was our very first marketing campaign. We didn't really know what we were going to do, but it was really designed to differentiate us in our industry as website and marketing company, I guess you could say. So the idea here was that people had gotten used to using mandated website providers, to using the same 2 website providers for every single website that they launched for every single dealership. So our idea was say, hey, let's not do things the way that automotive has always been done. It's our job to adapt to the consumer and not the other way around. So we really want to make websites that have an e-commerce attitude or an e-commerce flow to them. And Break Free was a big part of that. Break free from stale designs, break free from, like Kelvin mentioned before, using third-party lead providers, because we know if 83% of people are going to visit your website or prefer to use your local website, it's important to invest money in that, in what we call first-party leads. The second part is being immersive, so creating compelling, seamless experiences that deliver your brand beyond the product. I just mentioned it, e-commerce platform. If you look at websites like Amazon, websites like Nike, like Trulia, like Reebok, all of these giant conglomerates that have built websites out of product, really the idea is the exact same as automotive. The product just changes. So just because we're selling cars instead of shoes doesn't mean the communication mode needs to change. People learn information and attain information on websites in exactly the same way. So we want to make sure that we're creating those user-friendly, those user experiences for customers that are exactly the same as when they're sitting on their couch at home shopping for shoes. We want to provide that same thing, and that's what delivers us beyond our product. So think about that. What delivers you beyond just selling cars? Being authentic. I would say that this is probably the single most important variable of your brand story. So specifically, how will you relate to your community and your customer base? In Oshkosh, we're actually based in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Our headquarters is on Main Street there, which is about an hour and a half north of Milwaukee, if everyone knows where Milwaukee is in Wisconsin. And our battle cry, or our real, community outreach involves technology in what we call the Fox Valley. So it's a collection of cities that come together and talk about technology development, talk about job creation, things like that. So we've really found a way to tie in our community and the areas surrounding our community into our message and how digital really drives the future, not just with branding, but also just with technology development. So involve your community. If you have a post, if you use Facebook or if you use social media, what's going to get better engagement? A post of a very recognizable part of your town on your Facebook page, or just a picture of a car, right? It's always going to bring in the community. It's always going to create more conversation. And then the last one, being ambitious. So don't let mistakes scare you, right? Creativity means that you need to really allow yourself to make those mistakes. And the best example I have from this is one of my favorite case studies of all time. We call it hashtag technology and stuff. If anybody remembers this, this is from the World Series in 2014 when the San Francisco Giants beat the Kansas City Royals. And Madison Bumgarner was MVP. He was given a 2015 Chevy Colorado. And the gentleman on the far left of the screen that you see here, his name is Rick Wilde. And he is part of the sales and marketing team for GM in Kansas City. He was offered this opportunity to provide the MVP trophy to Madison Bumgarner, and he completely messed up the delivery. Right? He had about 30 seconds where he said, Madison, on behalf of GM and on behalf of MLB, here's your MVP trophy, and here's your truck, here's your 2015 Chevy Colorado. And he really just fumbled through it. If you get a chance to look up this video, definitely do it. It's totally worth it. You can tell by Bud Selig on the far right there, his reaction to what's going on here. So in the meantime, GM probably saw this as a huge mistake, right? A terrible outcome. But it's not necessarily the way that things always happen, because in the hours after this event or after this mishap, hashtag technology and stuff, which is kind of like the crowning achievement of Rick Wilde during this interview where he said the Chevy Colorado is filled with technology and stuff, just making a very vague statement about a very specific vehicle. So in the hours after this, hashtag technology and stuff was the #1 worldwide trend. It accounted for about 25,000 social mentions, over 2 million YouTube views, and what they estimated is about $5.2 million in media exposure. So GM leveraged that popularity and spun it into an extremely successful marketing campaign for that 2015 Colorado. If anybody has seen any of the Chevy websites or any of the social media accounts during this time, this is about a year ago now, you would have seen this all over the place. So my idea here, my value proposition is that there's no reason to be cautious, and you should think of every single moment, whether it's good or bad, as an opportunity to increase your brand awareness. Because after all, engagement, as Kelvin had mentioned before, visibility and engagement is about starting the conversation. So really, how are you going to start that conversation with your brand, engage people? And with that, we want you to ask yourself a question. If someone actually asked me for my brand story, could I tell it? Could I outline exactly what my brand means to me and what it means to my community, what I mean in the community, what my history is? And that's really one of the main takeaways that we'll talk about a little bit later, is specifically when we're done with this webinar today, if you have time in the next week, write it down, right? Wireframe your story. If you can write a paragraph about what you mean, you can put that into digital using the tools that we're going to offer you today. So ask yourself. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our next topic. Kelvin, go ahead and take.
Perfect. So now that we kind of wireframed our digital brand, now it's really like put together a plan of action. And I think number one, it's start where your shoppers are. And that really, the main point and main things I want to cover is with Google, right? In Google search, and mostly where your shoppers start the buying process. So what tools can you utilize to reach and engage consumers? So the three areas that we're going to go look over today are paid search advertising, PPC and SEM, so keyword strategies and display strategies, creative writing, so how you can create custom and engaging content for your website, and then YouTube marketing, so in video marketing, and how you can start kind of that video aspect with your dealership. So just to kind of give you an overview, what is PPC, or as we refer to it as the sprint, and then we're going to go through and how you can be creative and leveraging creativity with ads, as well as utilizing inventory, and how you can really target better and overlay data to reach consumers. And this slide definitely says a lot with my point before is, 83% of consumers use search engines during the shopping process, and that continues to grow with more devices, with more access to the internet, more access to Google, right? All that, and especially with the younger consumers, will continue to grow. And then the next step there, search 40% use Google search, the search 10 plus times during the car buying process. Just to go to show how paid search is certainly a good avenue to start with. So the paid search aspect, really there's two trains of thought here. Search, search network, and really it's basically all ads on search engines. Google.com obviously owns most of the share. And the idea here is really creating campaigns targeting certain keywords and phrases that people search. So in the buy here, pay here world, it's most likely will revolve around credit, loans, financing keywords, etc. So targeting those certain search queries that people are searching on Google, and then showing them ads, based on what they're searching for. So the display network, on the other hand, is really basically ads on other websites. So Google has one of the largest networks that allow advertisements and partnerships with websites, and most of these are you see on the right-hand side there are the visual banners that are advertised on other websites. And when we in the buy here, pay here world, we're really looking at how our banners that are targeting your consumers that relate back to your website, back to your brand, and what you have to offer. So getting creative, right? And I think before we talk about getting creative, there's two important things that we shouldn't overlook. And number one, I talked about the keyword strategy. Keywords matter, right? And a solid and well-researched and well-maintained keyword strategy is important in reaching buyers. Before you dive into what you're going to promote, take a strong look at your keyword strategy, from your bids to the types of keywords to the negative keywords. A lot of money can be wasted without having a sound strategy. And number two, I think it's also important to look at targeting, and we're gonna dive in a little bit towards the end here, but make sure you're targeting in the right areas, right cities and right zip codes, and you're fine-tuning your strategy in that respect. But our webinar today is really how you can be engaging and visible with consumers, and obviously the best way to do that is by being creative and incorporate logos, taglines, etc. where necessary. And so when we talk about branding, right, we're talking the biggest takeaway here is making sure that your brand stands out and it's clear on who you are. And whether that's taglines, whether that's messaging, whether that's your brand logo, make sure that consumers know who your brand is. And so the urgency as well. So does your messaging create a sense of urgency? Why should they click on your ad? And make sure that you're offering that sort of value proposition into why consumers should click on your ad. Location is another big thing. So are your ads relevant to the location you're targeting? Do they make sense for where you're targeting? And messaging, lastly, does your messaging stand out? Is it relevant? Does it tie into everything we just talked about? Does it relate back to your brand? And don't be afraid to mix your messaging up. Change up what's not working. Change it up by season. Change it up by sales. And don't be afraid to kind of change up that messaging and tweak your messaging. So on the search side, how can we incorporate creativity with search? And there's great ways to incorporate the creativity and relevancy in search ads is to dynamically insert information. So when we say dynamically, we're basically saying updating the information on the fly based on maybe your actual inventory or incentives or sales. Some great examples of this, would be prices, count information, maybe payment information, features, equipment packages, financing offers, and you see a couple of examples here. Most of these ads are utilizing some sort of dynamic search capabilities, and those two ads on the right are inputting the exact amount of vehicles a dealership has in stock, and then incorporating pricing information. In the ad you see at the bottom there, President's Day sale, right? That's incorporating what Google refers to as the countdown function, where we can count down to maybe when the sale ends. So great ways to utilize the dynamic aspect to offer that that sense of urgency and creativity. And so on top of that too, I talked about the keyword strategy, right? And it's don't forget to fine-tune your keyword strategy and what keywords you're utilizing and what keywords you're targeting. And lastly, test combinations to maximize your effectiveness and conversion rates. Being relevant and engaging sounds easy, but you might want to try and it might not be the most effective for your audience. Test different scenarios and test different ad copy. So on the display side, that's another big, a great way to get creative. And when being creative, most people can relate to something that is visually friendly, and obviously a great way to do that is with display ads. So the important takeaway here is be granular, right? Branding isn't always just enough. Be specific in your message and what you want your audience to do or take away. And what is your, and really what is your value proposition? Does your message create value for the customer? Why should the customer deal with you? Does it create a sense of urgency? And maybe why should they click on it, right? So we want to incorporate those type of call to actions in your ads. And there's many, certainly many ways to be engaging with ads as well. And a couple of examples that we have on here are dynamic ads. So dynamically generating ads that allow you to promote your actual inventory or the deep link to actual vehicle detail pages. And Some great examples, to do that is with dynamic remarketing. If in the buy here, pay here world, the inventory may not always be as important, but some other great ways you could look at, utilizing creativity and being engaging is with Lightbox video ads. So that ad there on the right is a Lightbox video ad, and basically it incorporates video with your customized messaging. So when you hover over that ad, it'll pop up with a video, and then the consumer can play the video, and then your ad is incorporated in that as well. So another great way to incorporate display is maybe through like HTML5 ads, so some sort of visually friendly and animated ads as well.
So just to add on there, oh, sorry, Calvin. So just one thing I wanted to add on there as well, if anyone's heard of HTML5 ads before, it's an absolutely great strategy because, as most of you know, Apple devices, Firefox, basically every technology out there is basically done away with Flash, right? If you guys remember Flash video that used to play on websites. So HTML5 ads, if you work with a vendor, if you create those in-house or whatever, they're an absolutely great tool to use where you can get animated display ads across multiple devices across the entire internet using the same display network that you would use just for general retargeting ads, or like Calvin showed here, Lightbox ads. So that's a really great tool, and if you want to know more about that later, we can definitely talk a little bit more about it. All right, go ahead, Calvin. I'll jump on to the next one.
Yeah, like even Google obviously has a lot of tools that they offer to everyone, and so there's just great tools within Google to create these animated ads for nothing. So they're easy ways and effective ways to be engaging and be creative. So yeah, like we talked about before, targeting matters. I think that's something that we shouldn't forget to optimize, and definitely it's something that you should fine-tune. And a great way to do this is through data layering. And so mostly we're talking data layering through the Google Display Network. So there are many options on the Google Display Network. If you really want to fine-tune your strategy, overlay targeting to only hit certain types of consumers. And a great example would be, say you wanted to fine-tune it to only hit males who are in the market for a used car, who are browsing car buying websites, and who are within 5 miles of your dealership. Google allows it very, very, very specific on who your audience is and who you want to target. And so fine-tuning your targeting will allow you to be very specific and granular with your message while hitting the exact audience you want to hit. So the in-market segments that Google has, there's many things that that they kind of look at, and used car buyers is a good example, and there's other like people that might be interested in used car loans or financing, for example. That would be great ways to overlay with your targeting. And so on top of that, data layering is also a great option if you want to utilize kind of another medium with Facebook ads. So Facebook is just another great example where you can overlay data to reach a specific audience market. And the cool thing is they offer a lot of targeting methods that you won't find with Google. So bulk data targeting is a big one. Custom audience targeting, where you can upload email addresses or phone numbers. And then just more so, they offer a little bit better demographic targeting than Google. And they obviously have a lot of that information, especially with profiles. And so Facebook certainly allows a great way to overlay more and more data to reach a specific audience. And on top of that, it's relatively cheap. And clicks on Facebook ads, for example, are pennies on the dollar. So I believe we have another flash poll coming up. So are you currently utilizing paid search or PPC or SEM? Pretty straightforward there, yes or no, or what is paid search? Well, all right. So, oh yeah, over 67% are utilizing some sort of paid search. 29% no, and 4% are still unsure what paid search is. But so I believe Kevin, we'll hand it over to you, and you can kind of go over some of the content marketing.
Absolutely. One of my favorite topics of all time to talk about, content marketing. So if Calvin just went over what we call the sprint of marketing, which is considered paid search, we also need to discuss this strategy that's a little bit more long-term, and that's called content marketing. You may have heard of this. 3-4 years ago, no one had heard of it, and then all of a sudden it's gaining traction in the industry, whether with franchise or independent or buy here, pay here. So it's starting to get a lot more exposure. And technically speaking, content marketing, we're going to define this as development of written digital content in order to attain and retain website visitors. Bottom line, we want to create compelling content in order to drive organic traffic to our websites from search engines. So with that, it accounts for about 85% of the search market, so we're really going to concentrate for the most part on Google search. My apologies to those of you who really like to use Alta Vista still. But with that, we really want to concentrate on 4 things. Google wants information, as you can see on your screen here, that's timely, accessible, relevant, and informative. Timely, accessible, relevant, and informative, or as I call it, TARI, which is your nice 3-letter acronym there, 4-letter acronym. So with that, let's dive into each one of these and what they actually mean. So first of all, with timely, think about when you do a search on Google. I'm sure most of you have done one today, if not this week, if not multiple times today. So what timely means to us is essentially that you need to have something that factors into the time, right, into something that happens recently. A lot of times if you search on Google, one of the highest results or one of the most relevant results you get is a periodical, right, because it's something that's in the news. So the example that we have here right now is just a simple search for Scion in Green Bay, Wisconsin, which are our neighbors just in the north here. So with the news about Scion that just recently released, that Scion is going to be rolled into the Toyota brand, one of our independent dealers actually wrote a very good blog post about should you buy a used Scion. So trying to figure out the market for those vehicles now that that brand is going away. You're not going to see something in here from 2012 for the most part. It's going to be something that's the most recent. So think about things like potentially press releases, things that factor into just mainstream media for the most part. They're going to show up as timely within search results. Google wants that info. How about accessible? You may have noticed this if you do a Google search from your Android device or your iPhone, but now for all of the results, Google will actually put a little mobile-friendly tag underneath the main results, right in that little gray text there. You can see it outlined on your screen. So Google is literally telling the consumer, hey, by the way, if you want to visit this website to get your answer or to get the information that is going to satisfy your request, it's perfectly acceptable to do it from a mobile device, whether it's an iPad, iPhone, like I said, an Android, maybe a Samsung, anything like that. So mobile friendly, it's important to keep in mind as well as when we're talking about websites that being a mobile optimized website is one of the highest ranking factors in Google's eyes as well. They want to make sure that people are getting all the information they want regardless of what device they're actually on. So accessibility is huge as well. How about relevancy? So how relevant is the result on the page to what the search actually is? So in this case, we just did a example of what does Johnny Manziel drive. If those of you know Johnny Football of the Cleveland Browns, probably soon not to be of the Cleveland Browns. But the idea here is that about 99 is my favorite made-up stat of the day. About 99% of car shoppers are not car enthusiasts, right? They're on the website every single day for the most part, but they're probably not shopping for a car every day, right? Most people are, 3 to 5 years, somewhere in average they're looking for a new car. So the rest need to find out a different way to appeal, to be engaging, and to be visible in that matter as well. We don't need to reinvent the wheel here. We just need to write interesting content that engages users. And in this case, this is something that we can tie right back into our dealership or our company or potentially our community as well that drives traffic from organic search, as you can see here on the screen, directly to, in this case, lowbirdmotors.com. All right, so it's engaging content that we can really leverage in our favor. And then lastly, informative. Does the result answer a question? So one of my favorite questions to ask Google is how to drive in a Green Bay roundabout, because for whatever reason, all the intersections in Wisconsin now, especially in the Fox Valley, have been turned into roundabouts. So for a question like this, Does it answer? Does it give me info in order to answer this question? Absolutely it does. Again, it's not necessarily something that's specific to our dealership, but it still answers a question. It still gives a consumer trust to visit our website, get answers about things that are beyond what we sell on our lot. So timely, accessible, relevant, and informative. So what are types of content? So number one, let's talk about blogs. Many of you have probably heard of blogs before, or at least the term blog before. And really the blog is what we call the story of your dealership. It's great social sharing material. You can typically host it on your website or on a separate platform like a WordPress, for instance. And it's a great tie in your community as well. They're typically written a little bit more loose. In this case, this is Boardman Nissan that did a new chance credit program and actually did a video and wrote a blog for that as well. And most web developers, depending on who you're working with a vendor, if you don't have a website yet, you can even use something like a Squarespace or a WordPress. But most developers that host your website will actually connect a blog to that website at no charge. We do it at DealerFire. We just say, if you want a blog, here it goes. We're all about, basically giving people the tools that they need in order to do the job that they need to do. And blogs are absolutely great for that recurring content as well. So it's not enough to just say, I'm going to post 2 blogs this month, and then I'll come back to it 6 to 8 months down the line. Right? You want to be consistent with that because ultimately what we're doing is getting people to travel to our sites for interesting content. But we're also giving Google a reason to keep coming back, or search engine in this case. Right? Google sees something new posted on the site and says, oh, I can go back to that site now because there's something new there. So we're constantly developing, curating new content on the site, not only for search engines, but ultimately for humans. Custom landing page is another great one. Content written with a little bit more of a technical style, so blogs are a little bit more free-flowing. They're the story of the dealership. Content is usually things like models, fixed ops or service, parts, financing, promos, events, things like that. And really what we're trying to do here is driving that traffic from organic search to your website. Remember that stat of about 83% of people prefer to use your local dealership website? This is great information for that. You can see here, CarRight, which is a client that we work with in Michigan, actually does a CLP for bad credit used cars in Texas. So we're driving traffic from organic search using keywords to this page to show what our value proposition is. Now, the best part of content marketing is what I call the ROI analysis. Everybody's heard of ROI before, I'm sure, return on investment. So specifically with content marketing, the great thing about it is that it lives on your site forever. So this page right here has probably been on the CarRight site for at least 1.5 years, maybe even longer than that. So the idea is that if it stays on the site forever, let's say in 1 year, just 1 year, we get about 2,000 views on this page, right? Maybe we're driving some traffic to it. Maybe it gets a lot of views. Maybe it's really highly ranked because it's extremely relevant. So let's say in 1 year we get 2,000 views on this page. That means with the cost of this page, we're getting each click from organic search results for about 15 cents per click, okay? Now I want you to think about how much that keyword, second chance credit loans in Texas, cost in a paid campaign. To be completely honest with you, it's about $12 per click if you factor in geolocation, if you factor in competitors that are also buying those terms, whether in automotive or not automotive. So for 15 cents in content marketing, it's a great long-term investment. And guess what happens? Every single time there's a new visit to this page, because the same page is the same fixed cost, that click or the cost of that click to site is driven down with every single visit to that page. So it's a great long-term strategy. Now keep in mind, as Kelvin talked about before, PPC being the sprint, if you need to get started up today, if you need instant results, PPC is an awesome, awesome tool. But if you're looking for more of a long-term, the marathon, something that's more sustaining down the road, content is an absolutely great strategy to use because ultimately the ROI in it is absolutely huge. For a small amount of time invested, small amount of money invested, you get a great return off of it. So that being said, let's do another flash poll. Or, I'm sorry, let's do ask yourself a question, not a flash poll. So have you ever reviewed the actual content on your website? So for those of you out there that have a website, have you actually read through it? Maybe you developed it and you read through it and that's fine. But like Kelvin talked about before, just like with paid search and display ads, that content can get stagnant, right? The last thing that we want to have is ad fatigue. So you have a display ad out there, maybe it's been out there for 3, 4, 5, 6 months. People see it every couple days and they're just sick of it, right? Or they just disregard it entirely. So we want to make sure that we're keeping that as fresh as possible, updating it every couple months, because ultimately when Google comes back and reads that content, it's going to have new ranking. It's going to have new indexing for you as well. So content is a really good strategy to use. So next time you get a chance, go to your website, go to your competitor's website, actually read the content, take a look at how it's structured, take a look at what their value proposition is. It's really important, especially for you to know your market or your primary market area. We do it at Dealer Socket for sure. When we launch dealers' websites, we want to make sure that all the content is written custom to them, not copy and pasted, not duplicated. But take a look at that. It'll really help you out in the long term. All right, so Calvin's going to talk a little bit more about video marketing now.
Yeah, so the video marketing concept, mostly we're talking about here is videos on YouTube, maybe social videos, or the paid ad advertising side with in-stream or pre-roll ads. So maybe those ads you'll see on YouTube before you watch a video. I think it's important to know that the video segment is continuing to grow. More and more people are utilizing YouTube and online video to do research and to find information. When it comes to car buying, 43% prefer online video content over anything else. So almost half of your consumers would rather watch a video than read about vehicles that you have to offer. And so when we ask consumers, really, what are the types of video content that you find the most useful? The top three are test drives, vehicle features, and safety tests. So most on a good note, 89% would rather have content that is not ads. So when developing a video strategy, it's really important to outline what you want to do, and where do you start, and really you need to really look at where you have the resources to do a digital video strategy. Do I have the budget? And kind of like the last slide pointed out, most people don't want ads; they want information. So it's important to utilize your current tools. Your videos don't have to be super expensive, and like I said, they don't have to be ads. So most videos on YouTube, when you think about it, are homemade anyways. So take that home video camera, your GoPro camera, maybe your cell camera to make your videos. They don't need to be expensive videos, to utilize on YouTube. And another important thing is be different, right? Most people don't want to see ads, so create videos that your consumers want to see and are engaging. Ads should certainly be a part of your strategy, and it's very, very cheap to buy video ads, for example, but it shouldn't be your whole strategy, and you should certainly be consistent when uploading videos. Upload consistently, and make sure your messaging is certainly mixed, but most importantly, make sure that you're always and continuing to post content on those social channels. And so recycle, I think that's another big thing that people overlook, and share it where you can. And so if you're developing a video strategy, just posting a video on YouTube is not enough, and make sure that you're sharing it on social media channels and maybe in newsletters, and incorporating it on your site, on blogs, for example, on CLPs. Reuse all that video content you're creating.
Absolutely, and it would not be a true marketing campaign unless we actually measured our success, right? And that's the other great thing about digital marketing. If you think about it, it's 100% trackable. So from form leads that come through on your website to phone calls, there's a lot of good calls tracking companies out there. It can all be attributed, it can all be assigned to leads, to sales, and you can measure that return on investment. So let's take a look at a few tools that we use and tools that you can use as well as you develop the strategy, as you start dipping your toes into these tools. What can you specifically use to measure your success? So some of our favorites specifically, obviously things like Google Analytics, and if you're doing paid search advertising, Google AdWords is excellent as well. We also have some third-party tools like Megalytic, Optimizer, and SEMrush that really help us kind of assess the market that we're in, assess competition, create some customized reports as well. And really, Google Analytics, that's used to measure your website traffic, right? But also keep in mind it's used to measure content. So if you're going to post custom pages on your site, if you're going to post blogs on your website, it's a really great tool that you can use, and free, I might add, if you just install the analytics code on it, or if your vendor does it for you, to track the views, the visits, and the ultimate ROI that you get on those pages as well. AdWords is going to measure your PPC campaigns. And I think the one thing I should mention is that there's tons of tools out there, right? Every third party out there has some sort of reporting tool. But you can likely accomplish about 90% of you need by just using Google Analytics and Google AdWords to start. Most of you probably are doing that already, and that's great. If you haven't yet, it's a great reporting resource to get started with. But we're going to measure our movement. And at Dealer Socket, we like to concentrate on measuring what moves us at the dealership. So 3 things. Let's talk about traffic, leads, and sales. So specifically traffic, we can measure that through Google Analytics, right? I mentioned before, it's no cost. We can see all of the visitors that come to our website and where they come from. The next thing that we measure is leads through our CRM, if we have a CRM. But ask yourself, how do you track the people that come into our store and or visit us online? Right? So how are we keeping records of those customers if you don't have a CRM? And then sales, which is obviously the big one, right? It moves our dealership probably the most of any of these. Do you have a DMS? If not, how do you track sales? Because all of these things can be attributed and binded together to really give us a great overview, just 3 simple stats, a great overview of exactly what the success of our dealership is. And with that, let's ask ourselves this. How will I measure my success, right? Like I said before, there's a ton of different tools. There's thousands of different KPIs in this industry. For those of you who don't know what KPI is, it means Key Performance Indicator. Calvin had talked about it before as well. So you can measure everything from bounce rate to page views to sales and so on and so forth. But ultimately, your success is going to be determined by the accomplishment of your own goals. So as you invest in that brand, as you develop it, as you invest in the tools to support your brand, always be conscious of what your goals are. You can measure it in many ways: highest gross profit, more website traffic, or even just an increase in Instagram followers, right? What does success ultimately mean to you? That's how you should measure your own success at your dealership. Okay, we are pretty good on time here, and let's go through a little bit of a wrap-up. We're going to cover the key takeaways from today's webinar and hopefully give you some parting points that you can take towards the future and really use it towards either developing or enhancing your digital strategy. So number 1, stay current. I used to say, when I gave presentations, when I work with clients, I always used to say that digital changes every 90 days. I would completely amend that now and say that it's actually about every 45 days. There's tons of great blogs out there. Some are automotive specific and some are industry agnostic. Definitely get into them. Things like drivingsales.com, dealerrefresh.com, Moz.com is industry agnostic. It's just about search marketing. Search engine land is the exact same thing. Find 1 or 2 websites that really work for you and give you good content and stick with them. There's some great forums on these websites as well that you can actually see similar dealers in similar markets and what they're doing. So keep that in mind. Also, know your mix. First part of the webinar we talked about was traditional versus digital. So always be aware of what you're spending on both of those. And if you don't know what your return is, you need to figure it out based on what you spend, based on what you're getting, or ask, right? If you're working with a vendor out there, that's something that for the most part, most vendors should be able to tell you right away. They should be able to get you a report on that. What is my return on investment for exactly what I'm spending? Starting small, you don't need a grand entrance, just a meaningful one. We've covered a ton today, but don't let it overwhelm you. Start with 1 task, measure it, and then move on to the next. And then lastly, from my side, wireframe your story. We talked about this in building your digital brand and success for the future. Outline 3 to 5 points that encompass your history, your community, and your value proposition. If you remember those from before, as being diverse, immersive, authentic, and ambitious. You should be able to, by the end of this week, create 1 paragraph that details your brand. That's all I ask of you. That's all that you really need to start with, because it'll really help you kind of tailor that strategy as you move forward.
So just kind of follow up with that too, you know, being current, I think that's, Kevin had some great examples for any of you like social media geeks out there. You know, follow those you know, blogs, those you know, resources on like Twitter, on LinkedIn. Those are great ways to get information right away, and so you don't always have to visit those forums or visit those sites to find that information. So on top of that, so the other great takeaways, make sure that you're aligning your assets. It's fine to say that we're doing it and we're doing marketing, but make sure it's implemented correctly and the people who are implementing it are held accountable. And another big thing too is be aware of vendors. Make sure you know what you're getting when you sign up with a vendor, and don't be like oversold on packages. I think the biggest thing that comes to mind is SEO packages. That's something that we often see with many clients that sign on with us, that they were getting an SEO package, but they didn't really know what that is. And so just make sure that you know what services you're getting and ask for reporting on those services. Follow the model, right? So take things that are engaging and make them specific to your brand. I think some of the greatest marketing campaigns in the last decade were borrowed. Don't be afraid to kind of imitate a lot of those trending marketing campaigns and even trending things in culture, viral videos or seasonal things, or maybe like the presidential campaign. Those are great marketing models that you could certainly use to imitate a marketing strategy. And lastly, measure. Know your KPIs. Know what's important for your business. And there are thousands of choices, but ultimately you know your business and you know what's going to be the most successful. So make sure that you're measuring the right KPIs across all your marketing platforms.
And with the last 3 minutes today of our webinar, I wanted to address a couple questions that had come through during the process here. And specifically, Calvin, let's ask you this one. So today we talked a little bit about PPC, we talked about content, we talked about video. What other digital mediums would you recommend using?
Yeah, so great question. We really didn't touch much on the social aspect. I think that is certainly a great and inexpensive way to utilize, for a marketing strategy. And when you talk about the ad aspect, social ads are very, very inexpensive, and it's certainly a good way to maybe incorporate with your social media, presence. But make sure if you're going to go on the social media side and the advertising side with social media is to make sure your strategy is set and in place, and you have a strategy with social media and Facebook ads. And I think another big thing too is Bing ads. Bing is a growing search engine. More and more people are using it, and it's still relatively cheap. Like I mentioned before, Google owns a vast majority of the market share, but Bing owns around that 20% range, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it's certainly a growing thing. So and it's relatively cheap, so you're going to likely pay less when utilizing those Bing ads, for example.
Great. There was another question that came through that I'm going to go ahead and take because it addresses me specifically. So, Kevin, you had mentioned earlier responsive and adaptive websites. How do we know if our website is mobile optimized? Great question. Comes up all the time now, and it's actually pretty simple. Check it from a mobile device, right? Check it from your phone if you have a smartphone. So if you go to the website and you have to pinch and zoom, right, you have to rotate the screen, it's in a bad place, to be honest with you. It's likely not optimized for mobile. And also, many people don't know this, but look at the URL. So when you go to that website from your phone, let's say it's www.dealerwebsite.com, we'll just call it. So when you visit from your mobile device, if that URL actually changes to mobile.dealerwebsite.com or m.dealerwebsite.com, it's actually called a faulty redirect. And essentially what that means is that the browser is recognizing, or the device is recognizing, that you have a completely separate mobile site from your desktop site. Very bad thing, because remember, from the accessibility standpoint we talked about with Google and accessible content, a little mobile friendly tag there, that content is not going to be very well received, and it's not going to be extremely relevant on a mobile device as well. So two big things there. Number one, you have to pinch and zoom. Number two, is there a faulty redirect? A lot of people go with either responsive or adaptive website design nowadays. Most vendors provide that service as well. Look into it a little bit further, take some webinars, things like that. Let's see, maybe time for one more question. Calvin, I'll ask you this one. How would I determine what I should be spending on PPC?
Yeah, so I think that's certainly a question that we get asked a lot by clients considering PPC and coming on. I think it's important to kind of look at three things. Location is a big one. So are you kind of in a metro area or a rural area? And how large is your PMA, and who do you want to target? If it's very small and you're not in a large area, you certainly can look at probably a smaller budget. But on top of that, look at the services you're providing. So are you providing financing? Are you providing some type of service? Are you body shop? Whatever. So the more services that you provide will cause your budget to inflate, and the more campaigns you want to build off of that will obviously need more budget. And I mean, another big thing too, is competitors. You kind of look at who your competitors are in the industry and in your area, and maybe kind of look at what they're doing and what they're spending. So Kevin mentioned before, there's a lot of great tools and a lot of great resources that you can utilize outside of Google Analytics and AdWords. SEMrush is a free tool that kind of will let you type in a competitor, for example, and see what they're doing for organically, maybe see what they're doing for paid ads, and kind of give you an estimate to what they're currently spending. So that kind of, you can utilize that to gauge at least a good starting point on what you should be spending.
All right, great. So with that, we're just about at time here.
Well, excellent job, both Kevin and Calvin. Covered a lot of material throughout the session today. Very much appreciated. And just a reminder to everyone that we have recorded this session. So keep watch of your inbox for a message containing a link to be able to watch the recording of this session, so you can go through a lot of the great strategy recommendations and information that Kevin and Calvin from Dealer Socket have recommended. Just quickly, gentlemen, if people have more questions, what's the best way to reach Dealer Socket to get those questions answered?
So they can reach out directly, Calvin, and I apologize for the echo there. Calvin, or my and Calvin's email address were actually on the second slide of the presentation, so feel free to reach out directly.
Excellent, excellent. Well, gentlemen, a job well done today. A lot of great information that can benefit a wide array of operators. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for attending. Have a great week.
Thank you again for joining us. Have a great day.